It's always such a delight, truly, to be with all of you and to sit with you. And wonderful to see familiar faces from previous sits and also from my community. Um, so, welcome everyone, and just noting that our practice today is going to be a practice of easing into Shabbat. Boy, do we need that. We need it every week. I feel like I need it a lot this week. Um, so let's join together. When we sit, we allow time to just be with ourselves and to notice the different sensations that pass through the physical self. We may notice that our thoughts distract us. We may lose sight of the breath. And we may notice that the breath is there for us to return to as a steadying and constant gift that will be with us throughout our lives. And this noticing itself is wholesome, and it can allow us to notice not just when we're sitting, but as we go about our daily tasks. So today, I thought it was so wonderful, Mark, that you started us out by asking people to offer blessings and to offer blessings to themselves as people were entering, because we're going to turn to a blessing practice today. And it's one that you may be familiar with. If not, it is something that you can incorporate into your own daily meditation. But I think even more importantly, it's one that can be brought into your everyday regular life, not just when you're on the cushion. And our blessing practice allows us to cultivate wholesome qualities within ourselves. So this week's Torah portion is one where we encounter a very powerful blessing. It's a blessing known as the Priestly Benediction or Birkat Kohanim. And you may have been so lucky as to have received this blessing many times in your life. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May the source of blessing bless you and guard you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the source bless you with grace or expansiveness. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the source of blessing lift you to wholeness, to peace. So I love that both Cantor, Lizzie Shamash, and Rabbi Jonathan Slater were mentioned this morning, because I learned this with Lizzie who was part of my clergy leadership program through IJS, and learned it from Jonathan Slater. So just wonderful to bring all of those elements together. So Jonathan taught us from teaching from Kedushat Levi about the priestly benediction itself. And if you don't know the way that the Kohanim, that the priests placed their hands, it's something that you might be familiar with, even if you don't think you know it. If you've ever watched Star Trek, so you've seen this, right? Yeah. So with both hands, the priests would bless the people like this. Yeah, beautiful. I think it's great that everybody's doing it. We can embody this right now. So what Kedushat Levi points out about this action is that when we think about blessing, sometimes we think about receiving, so it might be like this, right? But the priests, when they bless the people, they bless in an outward action. So it is a gesture of giving, and it is a gesture of drawing down blessing from above. So it's a beautiful image, and one that really imbues the priestly position, the blesser, if you will, with a quality of openness and compassion. So I also want to talk about this one word in Birkat Kohanim, which is Yisa, which is to lift up. And, it says, may God's countenance, God's face be lifted toward you. There's a lot that's in there, and we don't have a ton of time to talk about it. But what I want to focus on within this idea of lifting up and relating to blessing is that when we take the time to bless, we are engaged in an action of lifting up. When we bless ourselves, we lift ourselves up. When we take a moment just to bless another human being with our smile, we lift them up. There's so many little minuscule things that we can do to lift each other up. To lift each other up as individuals, to lift ourselves up as well, and to engage in lifting up the communities within which we engage. So today we will do a blessing practice that connects us to this most ancient recorded blessing of the Jewish people. And the translation that I shared with you is my translation, and my hope for that translation is that it encourages us to build compassion in this world. So I'm going to now invite you to find a comfortable way to sit. And maybe within that comfort, you can find a way to lift yourself up. Notice your foundation, where you touch the floor, where you touch the cushion, and take a moment to make any adjustments and find a comfortable way to be in the body. Just ask yourself, am I breathing? And without adjusting your breath, just notice it and allow it to enter and exit the body naturally. And as you allow that breath to continue flowing in and out, you can allow your eyes to either close or come to a soft focus a couple of feet in front of you. And I invite you to incorporate these phrases of blessing into your practice. May the source of blessing bless us and guard us. May the source bless us with expansiveness. May the source lift us to wholeness. May the source of blessing bless me and guard me. May the source bless me with expansiveness. May the source of blessing lift me to wholeness. May the source of blessing bless us and guard us. May the source bless us with expansiveness. And may the source lift us to wholeness. As we sit, I invite you to return to these phrases, and I'll put them in the chat box in case you feel like you forget them. But if you do forget them and you don't want to look in the chat box, there's always just the breath, the blessing of the breath that you can return to as well. And we'll sit together for a few minutes. source of blessing, bless us with expansiveness. May the source of blessing lift us up to wholeness. Shalom. Shalom. Wishing peace and wholeness for everyone. Shabbat shalom, friends.
Thank you so much, Kerith, for bathing us so beautifully in the light of Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing, and reminding us of the function of blessing to uplift. And we all have an opportunity to do that right now, to lift up the faces of those who are in mourning. We're observing a yard site, who are carrying a grief. And we invite those of you who fall into that category, if you'd like to share the name or names of anyone you'd like to include as we seal our practice with the Mourner's Kaddish. You can put that in the chat box. And for the rest of us, to engage in the practice of offering blessing to our to those among us who are in mourning, through the practice of uplift. And invite those of you to join me in Kaddish by rising in body or in spirit. Yitkadal,
Yitkadal, Shmei Rabban, Ve'alma Divra Hirote, Ve'amlik Malkeh, V'chayechon V'yom Uv'chaye Beit Yisrael, V'agala Gari V'imru, Amen.
Amen.
Shmei
Rabban,
Le'olam Olamim Hayam. Yisprach v'yishtabach v'yispoar v'yisraman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh lav shmei dekudasha brihu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechama amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Hey Shlomo Rabba min Shemayah b'chaim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yal kol yoshvei tevel v'imru
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to Cantor Deborah Stamen and Lori Fisher for sponsoring our practice today. Happy birthday, Lori. And I want to thank, of course, Adi Stein for holding our space with grace and skill, as always. And above all, thanks to you, Cantor, Kerith, Spencer-Shapiro, for leading us in this blessing practice based on this week's Parshat Naso, in which the blessing appears. Friends, we hope that blessing will bring you into Shabbat that is restorative and that will nurture your soul. We'll be back next week, full week of practice with Rabbi Sam Feinsmith to sit at Sinai together for a whole week. That will be a wonderful, wonderful experience, and we hope you can join us. And If you know of somebody who you think might benefit or be interested or take an interest in the practice, please invite them to join us next week. As always, you're invited to stay on for a few minutes, conversation with our teacher for today. And for those of you who are leaving us now, wish you Shabbat Shalom, and we hope to see you next week. We'll be back on Monday. Kerith, I'm gonna get you back here, hold on. There we go. Thank you so much. Again, and also want to invite folks, if you have a question to put to Kerith, please put it in the chat box. Kerith, I was thinking about, that you focused on that by Yisa Adonai, may God lift up God's face, which is like a really, it's just a strange and hard theological concept, right? And where it invites creative translation and framing of it in another way. The fact that the blessing occurs in this parsha, which was my son's bar mitzvah parsha, so it's close to my heart. That it strikes me the theme of the whole Torah portion actually is about uplift. The word naso is from the same root, lifting. So it's about the Levites who are the schleppers who lift, the aspects of the tabernacle. It has the blessing in it. And then you go all the way back to the beginning of the Torah, the story of Cain and Abel, where God says to Cain, why is your face fallen? Im tetiv se'et, if you do right, there is uplift. And it just suggests that really like fundamental to Torah and to Jewish practice, as the way you introduced it today, is this idea of, falling down and getting up, which of course leads to another teaching of our friend Sheila Peltz-Weinberg, fall down, get up, that this is the practice, right? The practice is we fall and we get up, and that we also, so that's my drash, okay? On your drash. There's a question here, which has to do with, I did not grow up with my parents offering me this blessing on Friday night. I don't know if you did, and I think about it in terms of my own kids and offering the blessing. To some extent, they welcome it. To other extent, they kind of push it away, and it's uncomfortable. And it makes me think about how this practice today is a little bit of a test for ourselves, or an experience of what does it feel like really to allow ourselves to be blessed. Mm-hmm. You offered that so beautifully, especially singing it to us at the end. What do you make of that as a spiritual practice of receiving blessing, of bathing in blessing? Can we handle that?
Yeah, it's so hard for us. I have a funny story that I'll share with you that has to do with my pre-Cantor life. I used to be in an all-girl rockabilly band.
Oh, well, you need to see that. You need to see the tapes of that.
Yeah. One of my musical partners was just like stunningly talented, wonderful person, and people would come up to her after gigs and give her compliments, and she would say, I did this wrong. It was terrible. I messed this note up. I didn't sound good. What's wrong with you? And I took her aside one time and I said, they're giving you gifts and you're throwing them back in their faces. And she looked at me stunned and she said, you're totally right. And so we even have difficulty, not even blessing. Let's just talk about someone giving us a compliment, right? We even sometimes have difficulty with that. So it can be hard to accept blessing, and unfortunately, what it points to is that we often think we're not worthy of it. Mm-hmm. And that is the root that we need to take care of, we need to nurture, and we need to overturn that feeling of not being worthy, because I don't care who you are. we are all worthy of blessing. So, and I felt like this teaching, there's so much going on in our world today, and I felt like this teaching, we just needed to hear it. I needed to hear it so much now, particularly with a lot of divisiveness within our own Jewish community that's happening right now. And there are words that are quite the opposite of blessing, being tossed about toward one another as part of our own community. It's very hard to see. And part of my practice is not what we did today. Today we did the easy part, the wonderful part of offering blessing to ourselves and to our community here. But part of my practice, and I know, Mark, it's part of your practice as well, is to offer blessing and compassion toward the difficult people in our lives, the people who cause us pain. And
It's
it's
a great pre-Shabbat practice, and there's a reason why that's a practice for Friday night. And whether you have children or don't have children, it's just an invitation also for everybody, on Erev Shabbat, to take a moment to offer that to ourselves, right? The other thing that came up for me, Kerith, was I was thinking about, I don't remember who introduced this to me, but pointed out that the root for bracha, blessing, is also used in brecha for pool. And that also has changed how I understand blessing too. And when I was describing you as bathing us in the light of blessing, like, especially the music. And, I want to invite you, if you don't mind, to reprise that before we end. Is that okay? If that's okay? Not yet.
Yeah, I just have to, I have a little setup that I have to do.
Okay. Or even a cappella would be fine too. Whatever works for you. I'll give you, just give me a heads up here. Because I think I need another dose. And I imagine I'm not alone. So to think about blessing as immersion in a pool, so that even if we have resistance to it, we are surrounded by it, we're embraced by it in a way. Parents, the tradition is to place your hand on a child's head, but we can do that for ourselves too. But even more powerful is that idea of just sitting and, like a mikveh, just immersing in that blessing. And like you said, boy, do we need it? We need it as individuals. We need it as a people. We need it as a world. As in Israel and Palestine, the world could really do with a good timeout and a good dip in the pool of blessing, of light. And how would that shift things? Ceasefire indeed. What if we really ceased fire internally as well as around? What would that be like for everyone to feel safe, right? For everyone to experience connection, to experience concern? Somebody mentioned earlier in the chat box, and I'm going to get to a couple of questions here, not only uplift, let me say, Andrew, not just uplift, but also carried over the threshold of the moment to the next. I thought that was really, that's a beautiful addition to the idea of, offering a blessing as uplifting someone's face, but even beyond that, to like lifting them over the threshold. Wow. For mourners, for people who are sick, just like carry them over the threshold. Beautiful image. Couple of questions. What about the status of the person giving the blessing? I thought the giver of the blessing should be a clergy person. Oh, all right, Kerith, there's a softball for you.
Well, so my practice is part of, my belief system, which is, I'm a Reformed Jew. So first of all, in terms of like the priestly class that this was connected to the Kohanim, that it was the Kohanim who were called up to give this particular blessing. that we don't, it within Reform Judaism, we don't ascribe, to the idea of still abiding by those different classes of Jews. That's of course different from within the different streams of Judaism. And I want to recognize that in this wonderful space, there are people from all different streams of Judaism, and that's one of the things that makes this place very special. That being said, as far as clergy, we don't have any special designation or status unless we happen to be Kohanim. And women are excluded from being Kohanim in general. So there are all sorts of issues there. But what I would say is that these are some of the most ancient words of blessing produced by ancient recorded words of blessing, let's say, produced by our people. And we all have access to them. And so if you are from a particular tradition that says, it is only Kohanim who should be granted the honor of giving this blessing, that has to do with at a particular time and a particular place within the service. So outside of that, these words belong to all of us. And I think we all have it as part of our heritage to be able to use them outside of that ritual place where they were used for the purposes of bringing more blessing into this world.
Yeah, thanks. Without getting too heady about it, thinking about what blessing, what we mean by blessing. And I know there was some conversation in the chat about accepting compliments, and I think the connection there was the challenge of accepting goodness, coming our way. But I do want to distinguish between a compliment and a blessing, which is not to say that the people who were discussing that meant to equate them. But that blessing, it's not so easy to describe it. But I think of it in some ways as, and even in the Parsha, God tells Moses, this is how the priests are to place my name on the people, right? It's not, they're just the conduits. They're not actually the blessers. They are just the passers through. They are clay kodesh, they're instruments, right? And so that goes back to that question about, well, who is doing the blessing? And is it because of their status? And it has to do with, it has to do with their sacred function to be transmitters of the sacred and elevate awareness of the sacred. So a blessing is not a compliment, and it's not even necessarily a wishing well. In many ways, maybe it's more like the namaste of, the light in me bears witness to the light in you that connects us in some way, which is why maybe everybody in the pool is actually a good way of thinking about it. Everybody in the pool of blessing, and we're all in the same pool. Whether it's, understand it as, in terms of water or a pool of light or a pool of spiritual connection. And there is a progression. I want to ask you actually to go through your translation in a second. But just to point out that there are three aspects to the blessing. There are three, and the first has 3 words, the second line has 5 words, and the third line has 7 words. So there's a progression, and it's understood generally as moving from the physical to the spiritual. The first one, Yivarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, about being physically safe. May I be physically safe, right? May God guard me and protect me. And then the second line, interestingly, which goes to the question of our sense of worthiness, do we deserve this, is Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, may God shine on you, right? That pool of light, Vichuneka is, and be gracious to you, which really means that, grace in Judaism as well as elsewhere means unconditional love, without judgment, no judgment. Can you stand in the light of God and let go of any self-judgment that makes you feel unworthy of it? And then we get to your line, right? But may God's countenance be lifted towards you, or may your face be lifted, right? And be blessed with shalom, as it's been noted, wholeness, connection, right? So can you go back to your translation for a second, and then maybe we'll close?
Sure. And I translate grace as expansiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there's like a connection between the physical. It's a joining, expansiveness is like this joining place between the physical and the spiritual. So.
Beautiful. By the way, before you, I know people want to know what the melody that you used, where that's from.
Yeah, so the composer of that piece of music is Michael Isaacson. And I also want to note that Susan Rosenstein, my music director, is playing that piece of music on the piano. So, okay, so here we go.
Okay.
May we be blessed. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. May the source of blessing bless us and guard us. May the source bless us with expansiveness. And may the source lift us to wholeness.
Okay, so I'm going to invite us. Thank you, Kerith, for taking us out. Oh, thank you. I'll just say now my thank yous while you get set up. Appreciation to UID again, as always, to all of you for being here, and to Kerith, who's led us so beautifully so many times on this journey. And invite us to end by sealing this with, again, finding a position that's comfortable. And on this Erev Shabbat for so many, at the end of such a challenging week, whether we're on the front lines or not, to be able to bathe in the light of this beautiful blessing and the music. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank you, Kerith. Hope to see you on Monday.